I cannot wait to share this with you today because this is so cool. But first, my name is Chris O'Neill from Sew the Distance. Thank you for joining me. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about two things. One is a good 1/4 inch seam allowance, and the other is chain piecing. And I'm going to do that with a quilt kit. So this is so exciting. This company, the Quilt Kit Company, is great. They reached out to me a few months ago, asked if they could send me a kit, and they did. This is a beginner's kit. this is called Sky Diamonds. They have a bunch. They're pre-cut fabric kits. Now that doesn't mean they're pre-cuts, like, 5.5 inch, or what is it, 5-inch squares, 10-inch squares, layer case, stuff like that. I'm talking the fabric is pre-cut into the pieces you need. So there's zero cutting involved. Also, they have different levels, so you can check to see if it's an intermediate, a beginner. This is a beginner pattern. And just to have a little extra fun, I'm going to time myself on making this. This one is going to finish at 64 by 64. It does include the binding too, but it doesn't include the batting or the backing. So let's open this up and see what we have. Okay, here we go. Oh my goodness, these fabrics. Now, before we finish opening this, I just want to talk about the fabric for a minute, because that was the one thing I was very skeptical about when they reached out to me, and I asked them about the quality. So they sent me some pieces to see how nice the fabric is. It's all quilt shop quality. It's all printed in the same places that the regular quilt shop quality fabric places are printed. It is the owner's designs, however, so you're not gonna see this anywhere else but this company. They also sell yardage, by the way. This fabric feels so good though. It is really high quality. All right, so we have these triangles, half square triangles, and these. We also have our background triangles here, and some more triangles. Move my scissors out of the way. And then the binding, look at that. And then here is the directions, the pattern, and you can see that it gives you swatches for all of the fabrics. I love that. It's right here. And then on the back is the actual pattern. And then we have, of course, the instructions inside. So the first thing I do after I take everything out of a kit is I'll read through the instructions and make sure I understand what I have to do. I'll also take some notes on those instructions, and sometimes I'll even photocopy them first just so I can take notes on a clean copy. Of course, don't ever photocopy and give them out because that is illegal. Just saying. So this has all the information on it. They have backing. You can purchase 2. Oh, one other thing that's really cool about this company. The first time you buy from them, you will get 2 pieces of fabric. Where is it? I have it here somewhere. Right here. To practice your 1/4 inch seam allowance, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and I'll give you some tips on that. Okay, after reading through all the instructions, this is so easy. This is a really easy project, and I can't wait to see how long it takes me. Now, I'm not going to sew it all in one sitting because I can't physically do that, but I am going to keep track of how long it takes me to make this, and I'll start by assembling it. And all we're doing is taking our background and our prints, putting them right sides together and sewing that 1/4 inch seam, and then pressing the seams open. That's important too. And then I'll show you the next step. So I have everything set up here on a tray. I have all the pieces, and all we're making are half square triangles. That's what this whole quilt is made out of. That's it. So it's a super easy project. I'll talk a little bit more because I did make a test block, and I want to talk about how these are arranged too. But first, let's nail down that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that seems to be an issue for a lot of people. So I have a few tips on it. There are tons of products out there that you can get. You can even draw right onto your fabric the 1/4 inch. But this is the way I was taught like 30 years ago by my Aunt Amy, and it has just served me well over the past 30 years. The first way is with a ruler and some masking tape. So you just take a regular ruler and line it up right on your presser foot or underneath your presser foot, and you just put the presser foot down. So I line that 1/4 inch mark right there, right where my needle comes down. It's really easy to know that that's my 1/4 inch seam allowance right in here. So you just take some tape, regular old masking tape, painter's tape, whatever you have, and you can place it right against that ruler, just like that. Oops, make sure it doesn't move, keep it nice and straight. And if you want to, you can even make a ledge by building up more and more pieces of this tape. But if you don't, you could just use that as a guide. So when you are sewing, and I'm going to take 2 of the pieces for our quilt, right sides together. I love that the corners are clipped. Line this up really well and stitch. Just like that. All right, so that's the first way to do it, is using this tape. So I'm gonna remove this tape because I wanna show you another way. Oh, another thing you could do is you can use Post-its and put that down as your ledge. So if we were gonna do this again, line that up. And then I just took a chunk of Post-its and line that up right there. Now this one doesn't seem to stay as sturdy, but it's still a good thing that you can use because it does allow you to have the ledge to run your fabric right up against. The next tip that she taught me, and this is actually something she had me practice on, so I don't have thread in this machine, I have an old needle on, and all she showed me was to use a regular index card. And let me show you. So we're going to set this down. Again, I don't have any thread in my needle or anything, or in my bobbins. We're just drawing on the lines, and you just stitch along. And the distance on an index card between the lines is 1/4 inch. My 1/4 inch is on my foot, and keep going. This is also a great way to just get an idea of where that 1/4 inch is. And it's a great way to practice sewing straight, because you're sewing on a line. Now the next step to this, now that you have your perforated lines, is to flip your card over, and you're going to sew, and let's see if I can do it. Hopefully I can. And you're lining up the previous perforated line that you sewed, and you're lining that up where you think your 1/4 inch is. And then the moment of truth, you flip it over and you see if you were on the line. Let's see if you can see that. I am on the line, so when you flip it over, you can see how well you did. This is a great way to practice that 1/4 inch if you don't want to buy any extra equipment, you don't want to buy an extra foot if your machine didn't come with one. It's a wonderful way to do it. So I hope you give it a try. Once we get our 1/4 inch seam allowance all set up, we're ready to go. And I actually made one already, which let me grab it. Here it is. Isn't it pretty? Oh my goodness. This is so much fun to make. It's gonna come together so beautifully. So we make 16 of these blocks, super easy. All I did was sew the half square triangles, which I'm gonna show you in a minute. And I set those seams, which is so, so important. After that, I pressed them and I opened the seams and then laid this out and got ready to sew it. But what's really cool about this is these stacks are already mixed up. So they're not all this fabric. You know, you don't have to do any work. You just take off the top of the stack and you sew, and you're going to get a variety in your block. I love that. I love that so much. So it's the next day. I changed machines. I moved things around because I made my sample. Actually, I've made 2 samples now. Since I made my samples on this Juki, I don't want to change machines. It's important to keep the same machine when you're working on a project, just because there are some teeny tiny differences. The other thing I did was I used the samples that they sent to figure out my 1/4 inch, because I was changing machines. And because I did all of that, I wanted to make sure that my gauge was right. I actually have a gauge on this machine, even though the foot is a 1/4 inch too. And this is an attachment. I'll put a link in the description. I'm using a neutral thread to do this, and I'm going to show you how I chain piece. I also have my ironing board set up with the iron. And I know movement breaks are important, getting up and going to another room, all of that. I did do a video years ago on how that's really not all that efficient. So if you want to check that out, I'll put that in the description, as well as some of this other information. When I'm chain piecing, I like to use leaders and enders. And basically that's just something that goes in before you're sewing and then something after. And it stops that corner from getting sucked down in to your machine that sometimes happens. Now in my Juki, I don't really have that problem, but I still like to do leaders and enders. I think Bonnie Hunter kind of invented this years and years ago. And I have a leaders and ender project going. It's gonna be my constant leaders and enders, and I will talk about that more in a future video, so make sure you follow along. So I'm gonna start with my leader, and I'm just going to line that up. I'm gonna put this in here, and I'm gonna sew. Now, like I said, I know it's a 1/4 inch, I know my gauge is right, and here we go. Now that that's through, I can take 2 of my pieces, and Like I said, these are randomly stacked already. They came that way, which is so nice. I'm going to put right sides together. Now the background doesn't matter which is the right size because it's a solid, but the print, it does. I'm going to turn that over just so you can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to stitch. Now I'm ready for the next one because I'm chain piecing. I'm putting them through. Same thing, pick them up, stack them, make sure it's nice and lined up, and make sure you only have one of each of the fabrics. And then I'm going to send the next one through. And that's basically chain piecing. This one I'm going to flip over just so you can see the difference, but it doesn't matter which side. And I'm going to keep going until I have 16 of these because that's how many I need for a block. I forgot to set my timer, so I need to do that. Now once this gets to be too long, I do pull it up here. So I'm on my 12th one. I probably should have done it sooner. You don't want this to drag because it's going to pull on your fabric. All right, back to it. Okay, now that I'm at the end, I'm going to put my ender in. And that's going to stay in there just like that because I'm going to keep sewing. Okay, stop my timer and I'm going to clip this. Now you can see I have this big long chain. So we're going to cut these apart. I'm going to show you how. This is called a blade keeper. You use your old rotary blades and put this in it, and it works really well for clipping these apart. These are going to go with my leader ender packs, and we just take them apart. And that's it. So then you're going to press these the way the instructions say and lay them out, sew them together just like the instructions say, and have all your blocks. So I'll meet you back here in a few days when I have them all done and we'll be at the design board. All of these are done and I'm starting to lay out. I did have to have my husband bring in a separate board and I just covered it with some batting because it was too big to put on my regular design board. So I'm going to lay this out. We're going to see how it looks, you know, do the best we can. Is so beautiful. I can't wait to sew this together. And I'm looking to see if there's any of these corners that are duplicates. And there is. There's one right here. So we can just turn this guy if we want. And really, it doesn't matter, but if it is something that bothers you, you can pay attention to that. Now, one thing that you could do instead of making a quilt out of this is you could make 4 table runners. You have enough, so you just do this whole unit, or you could make a couple table toppers. You could make the table. Whoops, that fell. 1 sec. Okay, so what I mean by that is this whole unit, making it 1 table runner, or even 3 of these, making a table runner, a couple of them. They'd make great gifts for the spring. Mother's Day would be perfect, or you could just make a whole quilt. That would work too. Now, I'm terrible at organizing. People ask me all the time, they're like, how do you get it from here to the machine without messing it up? The truth is, I don't. I always mess it up. So usually what I do is I label these somehow and I just use tape or something and mark on them what they are or what row they are, or I run back and forth between my machine and this board. There are ways to do it. I'm just terrible at it. People stack and I get all kinds of confused. Or, you know, you could just randomly sew this together too if you're not really worried about any of these fabrics touching, if they're the same or not. It's really just a fun, beautiful quilt. So I'm going to get to sewing. I love this. It turned out so cool. And here's a full view of it. It's amazing. I'm not sure how I'm having it quilted. I think I am sending it out to be quilted. Although maybe I'll try it myself. I'm not sure, but I love it. I think it turned out so pretty. It's awesome and it was easy. That was the best part. No cutting, just sewing. How fun. And speaking of which, it took me 456 minutes to make this. So that is, let me look here, 7 hours and 36 minutes. So you could easily do this in a weekend or on a retreat or something like this. Now, I didn't do this all at once. I didn't sit down for 7 hours or almost 8 hours and make this. I did do it in chunks. So it took me a week or two to make, but it still was so simple, no thinking, you just did it, especially with everything being pre-cut, which is awesome. If you're interested in buying this kit or another kit, you can check out the link in the first comment below. I also have it in the description, and I do get a small commission on that link. It is an affiliate link. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you take some time to sew, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.